Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series going over this image on the screen here of Keandra. If you guys are not familiar with this series, it's basically one where I do my best to break down everything I can about how I created that final image. I show you guys some straight out of camera images, explain my thought process in regards to the lighting setup and also the camera settings, and pretty much explain how I took that final image. Before I continue though, I do want to let you know that this video is sponsored by Adorama. Adorama is an industry-leading retailer that has been serving photography, videography, and audio customers for almost 50 years. Their motto is everyone is a creator, and they do their best to unleash that creator within us all by providing us with the tools and expertise necessary to get the job done. I personally shop at Adorama for the great deals on products I both use and recommend, as well as the great customer service on those products as well. If you find yourself interested in any products in today's video, feel free to check out the description area below for links to those products, and be sure to use those links if you decide to order. To get the camera setup out of the way, I was using the Sony a7R II with my Sigma Art 35 f1.2. As for the lighting, I used two Explorer 300 Pros and one Explorer 100 Pro. Those are the equivalent to the Godox AD 300 Pro and the Godox AD 100 Pro. I might as well show you guys exactly how that setup looked like, since I do have this behind the scenes photo. The 300 Pro that I used as the main light had a 34-inch beauty dish. Then I had another 300 Pro with a 20-inch softbox, I believe, for the rim light. And then I had a 100 Pro up on top with my fiance holding it just so I can get a little bit of hair light. And that was without any softbox. It was just completely bare. What you're seeing on the screen right now is the very first photo that I took in that spot at that photo shoot. And I was using f1.2 ISO 100 at 1/250th of a second. I did have a 6-stop ND filter, I believe, so I didn't want to go faster than 1/250th of a second, because then I would enter high-speed sync and then it would defeat the purpose of using that 6-stop ND filter. But camera settings aside, this is the very first shot that I took without flash, and then I added flash, which is this shot right here. This photo, of course, is a little bit underexposed because I was taking my initial first shot with flash and then figuring out exactly how much I need to raise or lower the output. And in this case, I needed to raise the output. So that's exactly what I did for this next shot right here. When I took this photo, I did like the lighting and I did like the pose and I did like the composition, with the exception of one thing, which was how much blur there was. I am usually a fan of a very blurry background, but for this specific photo, I felt like it was too much. I felt like it was a little bit like the green screen effect where she might as well have a fake background behind her. So I felt like I needed to go ahead and just stop down my aperture. So that's exactly what I did for the next photo. I went from f1.2 to f2.8, and then I also increased the output of the flash a little bit. I'm not sure exactly what the output of the flash was, but since I did increase the f-stop, or narrow down the f-stop a little bit, I think a little bit more than 2 stops, 2 1/3 stop, I believe, then I did have to increase the output of the flash 2 stops as well. Whenever you adjust the f-stop, the aperture, you are going to affect the entire image. So that's why I have a different exposure here. I have a much darker ambient setting, and that's not what I was aiming for when I took this photo. I did achieve the more in focus background, but it just wasn't the exact ambient level of light that I wanted. I felt like I wanted it to be a little bit brighter. So from this shot to this next one, you can see that I did raise the ISO from 100 to 200. That's 1 stop there. And then I also increased or decreased the shutter speed from 1/250th of a second to 1/125th. So that's 2 stops brighter in the ambient light. The exposure on her is a little bit bright, but whenever I'm taking photos at a photo shoot and it's just a slight difference in exposure and I have other things to focus on, like how windy it was that day, then I probably won't focus too much on that exposure just to get it exactly where it needs to be. I'll try to prioritize the wind and nailing down how the wind will make the hair look like, and getting a good shot with the hair looking fine with that crazy wind. So for this shot and the next one, I was pretty happy with how the photo looked like overall, and I just changed the pose. So here in this photo, you have Keandra with her chin slightly up, and in the next one, you have it slightly down. Like I said before, it was windy that day, so even though I did initially want to reduce the shutter speed to get a little bit more ambient light, when I took this shot, I thought, you know what, I want to go ahead and just increase that shutter speed just to reduce any chances of motion blur with the hair. So I'm going to go ahead and increase it from 1/125th of a second to 1/200th of a second. But by raising my shutter speed, I do also need to compensate and raise the ISO as well, because raising the shutter speed is going to go ahead and darken my exposure. So I need to increase the exposure and balance it out again by raising the ISO. So although this shot is at ISO 200 at 1/125th, in this next shot I'm at ISO 400 and 1/200th of a second. Obviously she's pretty bright in this image because what I should have done was turn off the flash, because my main focus for this shot and the next, I think 1 or 2 shots, is I was really focusing on how I wanted to expose for that background with different settings. So what I mean by that is I thought, okay, I do like the background right now, but I am at a bit of a higher ISO, so maybe I can reduce the ISO a little bit. And I'm also at 1/200th of a second, and I could go a little bit faster to go ahead and just further reduce any chances of motion blur with the hair whipping around with the crazy wind that day. So what I'm gonna do right now from this photo to the next one is I go ahead and reduce the ISO from 400 to 3/20th of a second, and then change the shutter speed from 1/200th of a second to 1/250th. And that ended up with this photo right here. Again, just to reiterate, something that I should have done but I didn't do was I should have went ahead and just turned off the flash so I can focus on my background exposure, because for this last shot here where she's very bright and this shot here where she's still too bright, I wasn't really focused on the flash on her. I was just focusing on the background exposure. For this one here, I felt it was a little bit too bright. For this one here, I felt like it was ideal. So that's why I ended up leaving the camera settings exactly how they are here. And then finally, reducing the output of the flash to get this image right here. Although I do feel like the image is a tiny bit dark. Like I said before, sometimes when I'm taking pictures, instead of changing certain settings and getting a perfect straight out of camera photo, sometimes what I'll do is I will see that there's that potential to just increase the exposure just a tiny bit in Lightroom in post. And what I decide at that point is I'll just go ahead and do that. I'll just make that adjustment in Lightroom in post. But honestly, like I said before, do as I say, not as I do, and go ahead and just change your camera settings right there at the photo shoot to get a good straight out of camera shot and not rely on post. But for this photo, that's exactly what I was doing. I felt like this image was a tiny bit dark, but instead of just changing my camera settings, I just wanted to go ahead and just start taking pictures. So that's exactly what I did. With this photo here, at the photo shoot, I felt like the rim light was too weak. But here, as I'm editing these pictures and looking at these pictures, I feel like it's absolutely perfect. So I wish I had kept that rim light exactly how it was in this shot here. But from this shot to this next one, I went ahead and just increased the output of that rim light. And now I feel like the rim light is too hot. So, I wish I just went ahead and just left that rim light at that previous output. But from this point into the next couple of photos, I pretty much was just going ahead and doing my normal thing, which is changing the pose of Keandra, telling her to look different ways, changing my angle just slightly, and then going ahead and just leaving the lighting the same. Except that for this picture and the next picture, the hair was something that was a bit of an issue. So that's why I ended up taking more shots than I cared for, because that hair was just whipping around. So in this photo here, the hair looks fine, but in this one here, I feel like it doesn't look that good. From this shot to this next one, I did add another light. I asked my fiance to grab a 100 Pro and just bring it to the top, because I felt like this last shot, I felt like it was a little too dark on the hair and I wanted a hair light. So I asked my fiance to get that 100 Pro, bring it up to the top and just aim it at the head so I can get a little bit of hair light. What I usually do when I add a light in the frame like this is I'll go ahead and take different shots. So that's what you're seeing here. I'm taking different shots, her looking different ways, changing her pose maybe. And then I'll continue to do that until I like an image, which is going to be this next one here. I felt like this image was a winner. So then what I ended up doing was I tried to stay still as much as possible. And then what I did was I just asked my fiance to move out of the way, turn off the transmitter, and I took this photo here. And this shot is going to be the plate shot. This is what I'm going to use to remove my fiance from the photo when I'm editing in Photoshop. I actually have a video on that, so in case you guys want to see that video, the link will be in the description area below, as well as in the top right corner of the screen. But there are times at photo shoots where I feel like even though I did take this shot that I really do like, maybe this next shot or this next two shots will have something that looks better than the one that I really like at the moment. So even though I took this photo and I liked it and I took a plate shot, I ended up taking this next shot here, and this is actually the final image that I ended up really liking. But I took this photo and I took this photo here, and then I finally took a plate shot so I can use that plate shot to remove my fiance from these different images right here. So this is the final image that I really liked from this photo shoot, from that specific spot at that photo shoot. So that's why I edited it. But let me go ahead and just show you guys real quickly how I edited it in Lightroom, and then I'll go ahead and end the video there. Right now what's on the screen is the completely unedited shot, but I did go ahead and just make adjustments in this final image right here. So that's pretty much exactly what I did. I went from this image here to this one, but to go ahead and just break down everything that I did, I'll go ahead and just act like I didn't edit that other shot and just do a fresh edit with you guys. So one thing I am seeing in this photo right now is the skin tone is a little bit green. green. I'll go ahead and fix that in a second, but what I usually do is bring up the saturation on the bottom with the blue primary saturation slider. I bring it up to like 80. That usually brings the oranges and the blues to saturated. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go to the HSL section and reduce the saturation of the oranges, and I will leave the blues alone, but I'm gonna go ahead and just change the hue of the oranges and see if I can make the skin tone a little bit better, because right now I feel like the skin tone is off. So usually I'll just play around with the slider and see how it looks like. And I think at -8 looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna go ahead and just change the yellow slider, and again I think at maybe something like -6 or negative, you know, just match it with the other one and go to -8 as well, and that looks good to me. And now what I'll go ahead and do is now go to the temperature, and I'll change the temperature. Let's see, 5200. That looks pretty good, but I still feel like there's green tones in the skin. So now I'm gonna go ahead and just change the tint to something like +16, and I do feel like it's pretty good here. So now I'll probably just leave it like this. If I were to do anything else, I might just go ahead and just do, you know, adjustment brushes, which in the past videos where I'll just go ahead and just use a certain tool in Lightroom called the adjustment brush, where I make certain things brighter or darker. In this case, I probably would reduce the highlight, how bright the highlight is on the rim. And I think aside from that, I might just go ahead and just maybe change the hues of the blue and see how I can get it to look different ways. So I think if I add a little bit of blue, like +15, and maybe change the luminance, let's see how that looks like. I think I might just go ahead and just leave it a little bit dark at -5. And at this point is where I would go ahead and just leave it and then do more heavy work with Photoshop. But for this video, because it's going to be already too long, I'm just going to end it here. And maybe in a future video, I'll show exactly how I edited it, because it is pretty lengthy edit. But that's pretty much it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you learned 1 or 2 things. And if you guys want to see more videos from this series, let me know by liking this video and dropping a comment saying you want to see more videos from this series. I want to say one last thanks to Adorama for sponsoring this video. It seriously does allow me to make more free content for you guys, so definitely check out Adorama. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the very next video.